Louise Hoel Howes, and I'm a silk painter. I've been painting on silk for probably about 5 years. Before that, I worked in watercolor and pen and ink. But the draw for me with silk painting is the incredible color, the brilliance, the vibrancy. It's just a wonderful form of art, very unpredictable, and it just grabbed me by the soul and took me away. So I want to show you a few things about silk painting. Of course, you paint on silk. You stretch your silk at all times. I've transferred a line drawing to my silk, and I've started putting the resist on this one. The resist is meant to stop the movement of the dye and contain the color. This method of silk painting is called surti, and that means closed fence. So let's work on this a little bit. Let's find our glasses too. Every fiber of the silk has to be penetrated, or the dye will move through it, and you'll have a lot of migration of color. And it just moves on. You kind of treat it like you would an ink pen. Get to create these great little fences. And this will hold the dye. This silk is about 12 mami is the description of the type of silk. It's a habatai, and it's a little heavier than handkerchief silk, which is usually 8 mami. And this one will hold more dye, and you'll get more richness of color. And so you'll get more vibrant colors also. It'll take a while for the resist to dry. Once it's dry, you can start applying your colors. These are steam set dyes, and they need to be processed in a steamer, which is, my steamer is about as tall as I am. It's a cylinder, and the silks are hung inside the steamer for 4 to 6 hours, so that the dye bonds with the silk, makes it light, fast, and washable if you're interested in washing it. And I'll check, before I start painting this one, I'll check and make sure that all the lines connect, and all the lines are thick enough that you don't have any holes in them for the dye to migrate through. Okay, this one is ready to dry and start painting. Okay, we're ready to start painting now. And you use the same techniques, a lot of the same techniques that you use in watercolor. You use washes, you use water to control the flow of the dye. So I've just applied some clear water on there, and now I'm going to put some color on and let the color flow into it. I saw my first silk painting about 5 years ago. It was after a very difficult time in my life where I spent a year taking care of my husband who had leukemia. We'd always kind of kidded around about what I would be in my next lifetime. I thought there must be an easier way to do it than what we're doing in this lifetime, so I was just planning on the next one. Had to have something to do with animals, preferably something to do with art, and I had pretty much settled on being a portrait painter, paint animal portraits. Well, after he passed away, and about a month into trying to recover from really just the absence of him, I saw my first silk painting. I saw a little newspaper article in the paper promoting a demonstration by a local artist, a Tahoe artist. She was giving a demonstration at the library here in Gardnerville, or Minden, and I went to the demonstration. It was given for the Carson Valley Art Association. I didn't belong to the Art Association, but I kind of crashed the meeting and pushed my way in front of a lot of sweet little old ladies and stood there and watched the magic happen. And I was so excited and overwhelmed by this, I just absolutely had to figure out how to do it. And that wonderful artist, Adie Chernus, has become a very good friend of mine. She works and teaches up at the South Shore of Tahoe and is very active with silk painting still up there. And we've become great friends, done a lot of workshops together, and she has led me on a great path. Before that, I started doing pen and ink drawings when I was 12 years old, and my mom would sell them. And in college, I put myself through school throwing pots, throwing mugs for 15 cents and bowls for 10 cents. First, things were pretty reasonable back then, and it didn't take a whole lot to put me through school. I was studying to be an English lit teacher, and I discovered that just because you like reading books doesn't make you a great teacher. And you see that I've still had some migration of dye across the lines. This form of painting, if you're a control freak, you're kind of dead in the water, because things are always going to happen, and you just have to kind of roll with the flow at times. And so I used to worry about things like the dye moving across a line. I don't worry about it anymore. I just kind of look forward to what new trip it'll take me on. Generally, I put down 3 or 4 layers of color. Sometimes I underpaint different tones, different textures. We're kind of moving fast today, so I'm not going to do too many coats here. Silk is a very exciting medium. It's a little out of control, a lot of serendipity happens. And as long as you're open to the change, then it's a really great thing. I live out in Fish Springs, and I still get to see wild horses on a real regular basis. One of the great things about living in western Nevada. And they're very inspirational. One night, we'd forgotten to close the gates, and we'd left a water trough full for our youngest grandson to play in. And I heard the horses out front, and I thought, oh no, they're going to go down the hill and break their legs on the terraced walks there. So I ran out, left the dogs in the house, and kept the lights off, and went out, walked beyond them, and kind of shuffled them all out the gate. It was one of the nicest things that ever happened to me, feeling all those big warm bodies going by me in the night, hearing them kind of snuffle and talk, feeling their movement all around me. We're very blessed out here. So, here we go. I'm going to move on to the background right behind the horses. I'm going to do a fun thing there. I said that we use a lot of techniques very similar to watercolor, and one of the things that I use to provide texture is salt. Salt will react with the dye and separate out the colors that make up an individual dye, and leave all sorts of texture around. So the salt has to be applied when the dye is wet, so we'll get a couple of areas working in here we can salt. You see how I always try to stay away from the lines and let the dye move to the line. When this dries, it'll put a great texture in there, provide a great place for your eye to move to. Oh, that was like the very wrong color. I have to do something there. So when I make a mistake like I just made, don't panic too much about it. I'll just kind of go with it. I put my green over that bit of red. And if you can't hide an error, the best thing to do is make it show up. So, to make it show up, I'll add some more red. We have to go back in these areas and salt them again so that we have a consistent look. And that's how the dye is applied. My name is Louise Hoel Howes. I'm a silk painter. I'm showing you my paintings today at Artistic Viewpoints Gallery in Gardnerville, Nevada. I'm a Gardnerville resident, live out in Fish Springs, have lived down here for 20-some years. Love the area, love silk painting. This painting is my most recent horse painting. It's called A Horse of a Different Color. And of course the inspiration for this one was this fall, which was absolutely gorgeous. And of course my friends, the wild horses again. I took my artistic license and I took my horses on a little trip up to Hope Valley, and they're there running through the aspens, and get to see the creek running through, and it's a very joyful piece, lots of color, leaves falling. It's a very exciting piece for me. These little horses, they come into my paintings really frequently. They change shape and form and order, and they've been great pals for me, and I've used them quite frequently. Not only do I spend a lot of time chasing the wild horses around where I live out in Fish Springs, but I'm involved with the Kids and Horses Therapeutic Riding Center also, a great program that takes kids with disabilities on rides, gives them great confidence, gives them something that they can actually control. All staffed by volunteers. We have a few paid employees there, the program manager, the equine manager, and the office manager. But the rest of us are volunteers. We freely donate our time for the horses and for the kids. I handle horses for the program on Tuesdays. I have 3 regular students, and it brings great joy to my life. I get a big kick out of just being around the horses. We're on break right now, so I'll be going up there as soon as I finish my last show, and exercising them, turning them out, feeding them, helping groom them, helping keep them in shape until our kids start up again in January. This painting is called Night Herd, and this is from the same set of drawings that you saw me working on earlier. This one I decided just felt like a night scene, and the horses are standing there on their little background, river flowing through it. Initially, when the very first time I did the drawing for this, I had it pictured as kind of just a sky scene in the back. And when I started painting, or actually I started doing my resist work, the clouds that I had drawn in looked more like mesas, and so I let them be. And it turned into a very nice Southwest painting. And so this one, again, is called Night Herd. This painting is called Pre-Range. It's a Carson Valley painting, and again, there's my little herd of wild horses there. And this one I wanted to involve some close-up guys, so I drew in some horses in the foreground, and I took a little bit of artistic license there. You don't see too many horses with stars in their coats, but mine do have that, and they're the wild horses of our great area. The mountains are, I paint sometimes plein air painting with friends, and when I do my plein air studies, I do watercolors, and a lot of my friends will come by and look at my painting as I'm working, and they'll look up at the landscape and they'll say, "You must be looking at different mountains than we are," because they don't see the purples and the reds and the oranges. But this is my world, so the mountains get to be multicolored. The horses get to be multicolored. The streams get to flow all year round. Another one of my joys is gardening, and I love poppies, and so I grow all sorts of poppies in my garden. I grow California poppies and oriental poppies. I grow corn poppies. These are my version of oriental poppies. I love the big, bold flowers and the rough foliage they have. And so, of course, I've taken a few liberties because you don't see too many checkerboard centers in flowers. But this is the joyful way in which I view them. And these poppies, I go out and do studies in my garden. I'll sit there and just draw the shapes of flowers and play with them a little bit, take the drawings down to my studio, and then just move them around, and eventually I come up with something that flows really nicely. Again, the color is so vibrant and so lively. It's a spectacular medium for colorful art. This painting is called All in Our Places. The old children's song about all in our places with sunshiny faces crossed my mind. You know, naming my paintings is one of the joys too. I often just read something into the painting. I see something funny in it. I like to have a little humor with my paintings, but I let them speak to me and pretty much name themselves. This little painting is called Dancing in the Dark. And as you can see, it's very similar to the last poppy painting, some of the same types of flowers in there. I did this one as a demonstration piece when I was doing a show in Sacramento this fall. The promoter gave me a fantastic spot, didn't charge me very much, but made me promise him that I would demonstrate for 3 days. So I took the drawing for this one, did the resist work at the show, and for 3 days I puttered along on this painting. I found during the first day that I'd only brought about half of my dyes, so I was a little bit limited in color. And it didn't bother me too much as I was doing the foliage and as I was doing the flowers, but when it came down to making the decision about the background, I needed a color that would tie everything together, and I had nothing in my palette except for black that would do that. And I'd never painted a black background on my florals before, and so this was the first time I'd tried that. And I just thought the results were remarkable. It just made the flowers pop forward, become very exciting. Of course, there's 3 days worth of painting on those flowers, so they have a great deal of detail. But it turned out to be a very exciting and precious little piece. It's called Dancing in the Dark. This little painting is one of my favorites. It's called Coffee House. And it's evolved over the years. It started as a sketch on a little scrap of paper. I was doing a show in the Bay Area, and on Sunday mornings, shows always start a little quietly. People arrive late. Everyone's around, all the artists are around visiting one another, and several friends had been in my booth visiting and drinking coffee, and when they all departed, they'd all left their coffee cups stacked in the back of my booth on my little work table, and they were so charming, I just had to make a quick sketch. I carried the sketch around for about 2 years until the painting came into my mind. And so Coffee House emerged from that one day at the show. This most recent version came about when my cat decided to come help me draw one day. I was drawing on the silk for the coffee house scene, and Indiana Jones plunked himself down on my light table and just took up a lot of space and announced that he wanted to be part of the painting. So I had to move the guitar over a little bit and build him a chair and put him into the painting. So Indiana Jones got to be part of Coffee House, this particular version. I've named this painting Passing on the Magic. And it began life in a workshop up at Tahoe, taught by my instructor and my mentor, Adi Chernus, who still is teaching through Lake Tahoe Community College and also through the Art League up at South Shore. Adi gave out an assignment for this workshop that was to paint an insect, and it was a 2-week workshop, solid 2 weeks, right in the middle of my busy season. So I was trying to make every painting count and point it towards my business. I went home kind of muttering to myself that, I had to paint an insect. I couldn't figure out how I could use that. I ended up drawing out and doing all the prep work for kind of a goofy butterfly over some tulips. Did everything I needed to do, put it in the truck. That night, went to sleep, and then I dropped this painting. Woke up in the morning and still had the picture of the painting in my head. And I thought, oh no, now I've got to deal with this. So I went down to the studio, did all the prep work, still got up to the lake by 9 o'clock, and Adi comes by and takes a look at the painting as it's progressing, and she says, oh, okay, what are you calling this one? And I said, well, it's got a working title, Adi, and that's Chasing Adi, which I felt like I'd been doing for about 3 or 4 years at that point. And I said, but it also has a real title, and that's Passing on the Magic. The people who've bought the versions of this have always been very interesting people to me. Generally, they work with their hands. I've had people who were hand therapists, nurses, and one magician bought one of these. So it's been exciting painting to carry with me and to see who claims them. This painting is called Old Coyote, and I've been fortunate enough to spend a little time down in Arizona doing shows and poking around in Santa Fe and out in those areas, and love the Southwest, love the gorgeous skies, love the pueblos. Everything just lends itself to silk painting. This one has a little storyboard around it where it has this wonderful symbolism. And I sold the painting, and the lovely man who bought it asked me, he says, well, are these Indian symbols? I said, oh, I can't quite take somebody else's symbolism, so they're all my symbols. The sun and the moon, the stars, fish, the little birds, the open hands, they all bring me right back into the painting. So I just wanted to share those and put them in this painting called Old Coyotes. This painting is called Southwest of Here. And again, it's inspired by the pueblos and the scenery of Arizona and New Mexico. You can see all the salt techniques used in this painting. You can see the washes, the light yellow wash put in the background before I ran the dyes of red and purple into it. Around the border, I really tried to weather the painting by underpainting lots of different colors, lots of dark colors, and then putting probably 3 layers of the red dye over that, and then salting it on the last layer. The red dye is really a wonderful dye that I found this past winter. It helped me get through winter with joy and excitement. The first layer, however, I put on came out kind of a cherry red, and it was a little disappointing. And the second layer turned into kind of a barn red, and that wasn't really what I had in mind. The third layer turned into this great great red, and it provided a lot of excitement through the winter for me. The only problem was that almost every painting I turned out for 3 months was red. I had to finally put an end to it and say, let's just use this a little bit. This painting is called North of Cave Rock, and it is, I believe this was the very first Tahoe painting I ever did, the very first version of it. And it was brought about by finding a little picture my dad took in about 1954. Is a little tiny black and white picture. He'd taken me up to see where his family was raised in Virginia City, and we'd stopped at Cave Rock area, and we'd hiked down, and he took this picture. And so this is my version of it. I added in the poppies and lupin. I'm allowed to do that because I am an artist, and it is my world. But it's a delightful painting. I got to do lots of cloud reflections in the water, played with color, played with salt, got the great Tahoe blue sky and the Tahoe blue lake. It's a fun picture, and it was the very first one that this gallery ever sold for me, Artistic Viewpoints. I think the very first month they were open a few years ago, Bill had been up at Tahoe fishing on a charter fishing trip, met some people, drug them down here to his gallery, and they went home with one of my paintings. So it has a very special place in my heart. This painting is called Above Emerald Bay, and that's what we're seeing here is Emerald Bay, Finette Island, the view across the lake, the great Tahoe skies again. It's a perfect medium for doing Tahoe skies. You get the movement, the washes just blend into each other, the salt gets everything mixed around there, and you just get fantastic color. The poppies and the lupin, well, in the real world they may not bloom at the same time, but in this painting there they are. It's an exciting painting, a little license taken with colors of trees and all, but it expresses my feelings about Tahoe and the love I have for the area. I can still remember kayaking across the mouth of Emerald Bay and trying to beat the speedboats so that they didn't squash our little trail of about 8 kayaks going across there. And had lunch right about here on the beach. I've had wonderful days at Tahoe.